The way my grandson laughed when his girlfriend called my home vintage wasn't the kind of laugh that makes you feel warm inside. It was the kind that makes you realize you've become someone's embarrassment. But I smiled anyway, because sometimes the best response is patience. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button, because this story is about to get interesting. I'm Margaret, 68 years old, and I've lived in the same apartment building on Maple Street for 42 years. The building's old, I'll give you that. The elevator creaks, the hallways smell like decades of cooking, and the wallpaper hasn't been changed since 1985. My grandson Daniel used to love visiting when he was little. He'd run through these same hallways, ride that creaky elevator up and down, and beg me to make my famous pot roast in my tiny kitchen. But that was before Vanessa. Daniel met Vanessa at some charity gala downtown. She came from money, the kind of money that makes regular people feel small. Her father, Richard Pemberton, owned Pemberton Development, one of the biggest real estate companies in the city. Vanessa herself worked as an interior designer for luxury condos, the kind that sell for $3 million and up. I met her for the first time 6 months ago. Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner, and I could see her trying not to wrinkle her nose as she stepped into my apartment. She wore white pants. Who wears white pants to visit a 68-year-old woman's apartment in an old building? Someone who wants to make a point. That's who. This is so authentic, she said, touching my floral couch like it might have diseases. Very retro. Daniel had changed since meeting her. He used to be proud of his background, proud of how his mother and I worked hard to give him a good life. His mother, my daughter Sarah, passed away 5 years ago from cancer. Daniel was all I had left of her, and I'd helped put him through college, helped him get his start at the marketing firm where he now worked. We were close. Or, we had been. Grandma lives simply, Daniel explained to Vanessa that day, and I heard the apology in his voice. She's always been, careful with money. Careful with money. That was one way to put it, I supposed. The dinner invitation came 3 weeks ago. Vanessa's parents wanted to meet Daniel's family before things got serious. The words were Vanessa's, delivered through Daniel over the phone. They're having dinner at the club, Daniel said. Saturday, at 7. Can you make it, Grandma? The country club? I asked. Yeah, I know it's not usually your scene, but Vanessa's parents are members and, well, it's kind of a big deal to them. I heard what he didn't say. Please don't embarrass me. Please dress nicely. Please don't mention that you live in that old building. I went shopping that week. Found a lovely navy dress at Nordstrom, nothing too flashy. Got my hair done at the salon where I'd been going for 20 years. I looked good, if I do say so myself. Respectable. Maybe even elegant. The country club was exactly what I expected. All cream carpets and crystal chandeliers, men in blazers and women dripping in jewelry. The hostess looked at me like I might have wandered in by mistake before Daniel appeared and vouched for me. Grandma, you look great, he said, but his eyes were scanning my outfit like a security checkpoint, checking for anything that might humiliate him. Vanessa's parents were already seated at a table by the window. Richard Pemberton was a large man with silver hair and a handshake that tried too hard. His wife, Christine, wore enough diamonds to fund a small country and smiled with teeth too white to be real. Margaret, Christine said, standing to air kiss near my cheeks. We've heard so much about you. Please, sit. The first 30 minutes were fine. We talked about the weather, about Daniel's job, about Vanessa's latest design project. I ordered the salmon. Everything was pleasant. Then Richard asked the question. So, Margaret, what part of town do you live in? Maple Street, I said. Over in the old district. I saw Vanessa and Daniel exchange a look. Oh, that area, Christine said, her smile tightening. Well, it's very historic, isn't it? It is, I agreed. Full of history. Grandma's been there forever. Daniel jumped in. She's very attached to the neighborhood. I can imagine, Richard said, cutting his steak with precision. Those old buildings, though. can't be easy to maintain. A lot of elderly folks in those areas struggle with upkeep, property taxes, that sort of thing. I manage, I said simply. Of course, of course. Christine patted my hand like I was a child. It's wonderful that you're independent. So many women your age end up having to move in with family or into assisted living. Vanessa leaned forward. Actually, Mom, we've been talking about that. Haven't we, Daniel? My grandson looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Well, I mean, we've mentioned. Daniel's worried about you, Margaret, Vanessa interrupted, her voice dripping with concern that didn't reach her eyes. Living alone in that old building. The neighborhood's not what it used to be. The building's safe, I said. But is it, though? Richard leaned back in his chair. I know that area. I've looked at properties there. Most of those buildings are one bad winter away from major problems. Foundation issues. Plumbing. Electrical systems that haven't been updated since the 70s. Grandma's apartment is small too, Daniel added quietly, like he was apologizing for my existence. Just one bedroom. And the elevator breaks down a lot. Oh dear, Christine said. That must be so difficult. Stairs at your age? I took a sip of water. I'm 68, not 98. I can handle stairs. Of course, Richard said. But why should you have to? Vanessa was just telling us about a wonderful assisted living facility on the north side. Very upscale, beautiful grounds. They have bridge games, book clubs, all sorts of activities. The table went quiet. I looked at each of them. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa was studying her wine glass. Christine and Richard were looking at me with that particular expression wealthy people get when they think they're being charitable. You've researched assisted living facilities for me? I asked Vanessa. Just options, she said brightly. I mean, Daniel worries. You're alone in that apartment. What if something happened? What if you fell? I have a phone, but the response time in that neighborhood. Richard shook his head. I've seen the statistics. Emergency services take twice as long to reach those old districts. Plus, Vanessa added, think of how much easier it would be for Daniel to visit you. The North Side facility is only 15 minutes from our new condo. Your new condo? I looked at Daniel. He had the grace to blush. We were going to tell you. Vanessa and I found a place. We're moving in together next month. How wonderful, I said. Congratulations. It's in the Riverside development, Christine said proudly. Richard's company built it. Absolutely gorgeous. 23rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The building has a doorman, a gym, a rooftop pool. Sounds lovely, I said. It is, Vanessa agreed. Which is why we think you'd be so much more comfortable somewhere modern too. Somewhere with amenities and security and people your own age. There it was. The real issue. I was an embarrassment, a grandmother, who lived in an old building in an unfashionable neighborhood, who didn't have the right address or the right lifestyle to fit into Vanessa's world. I set down my fork carefully. And I suppose this assisted living facility is expensive? Oh, don't worry about that. Richard waved his hand. We've looked into it. Your Social Security would cover part of it, and I'm sure Daniel would be happy to help with the rest. Wouldn't you, son? Daniel nodded miserably. Of course, Grandma. If that's what you wanted. Actually, Richard continued, warming to his subject, this might work out perfectly, because I've been meaning to talk to you about your building anyway. My fingers tightened on my napkin. Oh, Pemberton Development is looking to acquire properties in that district. We're planning a major revitalization project. Tearing down those old buildings. Putting up modern mixed-use developments. Retail on the ground floor. Luxury apartments above. It's going to completely transform the neighborhood. And you want to buy my building? I asked. Well, not just yours. The whole block, actually. We've already secured most of the properties. There are just a few holdouts left. He smiled like he was doing me a favor. But here's the thing, Margaret. You don't own, do you? You rent? I took another sip of water. What makes you think that? Just an assumption, Richard said. Most people in those buildings are renters. The owners are usually overseas investors or estates that haven't been settled. It's why the buildings are in such poor condition. Absentee landlords. I see, I said. But actually, Vanessa interjected, this could be perfect timing. If you're renting, you won't have to worry about selling or any of that complicated stuff. You can just move to the assisted living facility, and when the building gets torn down, you'll already be settled somewhere nicer. Christine raised her wine glass. It all works out beautifully, doesn't it? Daniel was staring at his plate. My grandson, who I'd raised partly, who I'd helped through college, who used to tell me I was his hero, couldn't even look at me while his girlfriend and her family planned my life like I was a problem to be solved. The laughter started then. Not from me, from Richard. He was telling some story about another property acquisition, about some old woman who didn't want to sell, and how they'd eventually convinced her. Everyone at the table laughed. Everyone except me. And except Daniel, who looked like he might be sick. I let them finish their story. Let them have their moment. Then I set down my napkin and stood. Thank you for dinner, I said. It's been very enlightening. Oh, you're not leaving, are you? Christine asked. We haven't had dessert yet. I have an early morning, I said. But I want you all to know how much I appreciate your concern for my well-being. It's very touching. Vanessa smiled, taking this as agreement. We just want what's best for you, Margaret. I'm sure you do, I said. I looked at Daniel finally. Walk me to my car? We didn't speak until we were in the parking lot. The night air was cool, and I could see my breath. Grandma, I'm sorry, Daniel started. I didn't know they were going to ambush you like that. Didn't you? I asked. You told Vanessa I was struggling. You told her I lived in a small apartment in a bad neighborhood. You let her think I was some poor old woman who needed to be managed. That's not. I never said you were struggling financially. I just said you lived simply, that you'd always been careful with money. Because I'm poor, Daniel? Is that what you tell people? That your grandmother is poor? No. He ran his hand through his hair. Vanessa's family has certain expectations. They live a certain way. I thought if I prepared them, if I explained that we came from normal people, middle-class people, it would be easier. Easier for whom? He didn't answer. I raised you better than this, I said quietly. Your mother raised you better than this. That hit him. I saw it in his face. Don't bring Mom into this. Your mother lived in that same building, Daniel. Your mother grew up in that apartment. She never thought she was too good for Maple Street. Times were different then. No, I said. You were different then. You used to be proud of where you came from. I am proud. You're embarrassed. There's a difference. I pulled my keys from my purse. But you know what? You and Vanessa and her parents don't need to worry about me anymore. I'll be just fine. What does that mean? It means I can take care of myself. I always have. I drove home to Maple Street in silence. The building looked the same as always when I pulled up. Old brick facade, worn steps, the lobby that smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking from 3B. I'd lived here for 42 years. I'd raised my daughter here. I'd mourned my husband here. I'd built a life here, and I owned every single inch of it. The next morning, I made myself a cup of coffee and called my lawyer. Thomas had been handling my affairs for 20 years, ever since my husband passed and left me with more money than anyone knew about. Margaret, he answered on the second ring. What can I do for you? I need you to pull the files on the Maple Street property and the surrounding buildings. All of them. All 37 properties? Yes. I want to know exactly what Richard Pemberton has acquired and what he hasn't. Planning to make a move? Something like that. The truth was simple, though nobody bothered to ask. My husband, Robert, had been a genius with real estate. Back in the 60s and 70s, when everyone else was fleeing the city for the suburbs, Robert bought up old buildings in neighborhoods people thought were dying. He bought them cheap, maintained them well enough to keep tenants happy, and sat on them for decades while the property values climbed. When Robert died 15 years ago, I inherited everything. 37 buildings across the city. Not just my building on Maple Street, but the whole block, plus properties in 6 other neighborhoods. The portfolio was worth approximately $43 million. But I'd never told anyone. I kept living in the same apartment, kept driving my same 10-year-old sedan, kept shopping at the same grocery store. I didn't need a mansion, or a luxury car, or a country club membership. I needed my community, my neighbors, my routine, and I needed to know that people loved me for who I was, not what I had. Daniel had passed that test once. But somewhere along the way, Vanessa had changed the equation. Thomas called me back 3 hours later with the information. Richard Pemberton had acquired 18 properties on Maple Street. He was 3 buildings short of having enough to move forward with his development plan. And those 3 buildings? All mine. He's been trying to contact the owners for months, Thomas said. But the properties are held in trust, with you as the beneficiary. He has no idea who actually owns them. Perfect, I said. Keep it that way for now. What are you planning, Margaret? I'm planning to teach some people a lesson about assumptions. The call came that afternoon. Daniel's number flashed on my phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hi, sweetheart, I said. Grandma, I need to tell you something. He sounded stressed. Vanessa's dad wants to meet with the owner of your building. He's been trying to buy it for his development project, and apparently the owner finally agreed to a meeting. Is that so? Yeah. And the thing is, he wants me to come along. He thinks since I'm dating Vanessa and I know the building, I might be able to help persuade the owner to sell. There's this whole negotiation happening Monday at his office. How exciting for you, Grandma. I feel terrible about last night. I really do. And I promise, whatever happens with the building, I'll make sure you have somewhere good to go. Vanessa and I talked, and we can help with the moving costs. First month's rent at a new place, whatever you need. I closed my eyes. My sweet, stupid grandson. That's very generous, Daniel. I just want you to be okay. I will be. Don't worry about me. You focus on your meeting Monday. Monday morning, I woke up early and dressed carefully. Not the nice navy dress from the country club dinner. Instead, I chose a gray Armani suit I'd bought years ago but rarely wore. I styled my hair, put on the pearl earrings Robert gave me for our 30th anniversary, and drove to downtown. Pemberton Development occupied the top 3 floors of the Morrison Building. The reception area was all glass and steel, with modern art on the walls and a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I'm here for the 9 o'clock meeting, I told her. Margaret Sullivan. She checked her computer, and her eyes widened slightly. Of course, Mrs. Sullivan. Mr. Pemberton is expecting you. 23rd floor, corner office. The elevator ride gave me time to prepare. I knew what was coming. I knew Richard would be condescending, would offer me what he thought was a generous price, while actually trying to steal my property for a fraction of its worth. I knew Daniel would be there, probably looking uncomfortable, definitely not expecting to see his grandmother walk through that door. I was right on all counts. The conference room was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard sat at the head of a long table. Vanessa was there too, which I hadn't expected. And Daniel, looking exhausted in a wrinkled shirt. They all looked up when I walked in. Daniel's face went white. Grandma? What are you doing here? I'm here for the 9 o'clock meeting, I said calmly. About the Maple Street properties. Richard stood, confused. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. We're meeting with the property owner. I know, I said. That's me. The silence that followed was beautiful. I took a seat at the table and folded my hands. I don't understand, Richard finally said. The properties are held in trust. The owner is listed as a corporation. Sullivan Holdings, I said. That's my corporation. The trust was set up by my late husband. I'm the sole beneficiary and decision maker. Daniel looked like he might faint. You own the building? I own your building, Daniel. And the 2 buildings next to it, and the 4 buildings across the street, and 29 other properties throughout the city. Vanessa's mouth was literally hanging open. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. I choose to live simply, I interrupted. There's a difference between can't afford something and don't need it. Richard recovered first, shifting into business mode. Well, this is unexpected, but wonderful. It means we can negotiate directly. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm prepared to offer you $4 million for the 3 properties we need. $4 million, I repeated, for 3 buildings in a prime location that you're planning to turn into luxury developments worth 10 times that much. It's a fair price, considering the condition of the buildings and the cost of demolition. Is it? Because I had my own assessors look at the properties last week. Based on the location, the development potential, and the current market value, those 3 buildings are worth at least $8 million each. The color drained from Richard's face. That's an inflated number. Is it? Or is $4 million an insulting lowball offer that you were hoping to push through before the owner realized what they had? I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. I also had my lawyer look into your other acquisitions on Maple Street. You paid Mrs. Chen in 3B $40,000 for her lease assignment, even though you knew the building was worth $2 million. You convinced Mr. Martinez that his property was worthless because of foundation issues that didn't actually exist. You've systematically taken advantage of elderly property owners who didn't have the resources to fight back. That's business, Richard said, but his voice had lost its confidence. It's exploitation, I corrected. And it stops now. Vanessa found her voice. You can't do this. Dad needs those properties. He's already committed to investors. If he can't deliver, then he shouldn't have made promises he couldn't keep, I said. I looked at Daniel. Did you know? About the people your future father-in-law was cheating? No. Grandma, I swear I didn't know any of this. But you knew I lived there. You knew those were my neighbors. And you were willing to help push them out for what? To impress Vanessa's family? To prove you belonged in their world? He couldn't answer. I stood. Here's what's going to happen. Richard, you're going to revisit every deal you made on Maple Street. You're going to compensate Mrs. Chen and Mr. Martinez and everyone else you underpaid with fair market value. My lawyer will audit the transactions to ensure compliance. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure every property owner in this city knows how Pemberton Development does business. I'll tie up your project with so many lawsuits and zoning challenges that you'll be lucky to break ground in a decade. And I'll start buying up properties in every neighborhood you're eyeing for development, just to make sure you can't do to anyone else what you did on Maple Street. Richard's jaw tightened. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a chance to make things right. Take it or don't. Either way, my buildings aren't for sale. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and about that assisted living facility, the one on the north side that you thought was perfect for me? I own that too. Bought it 12 years ago. The staff is excellent, the care is wonderful, and the residents are very happy. But I'm nowhere near ready to live there myself. I left them sitting in that conference room and took the elevator down alone. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my car, not from anger but from adrenaline. I'd never done anything like that before. In 42 years of owning property, I'd always worked quietly, behind the scenes, through lawyers and managers. But sometimes you have to step into the light. Sometimes you have to show people exactly who you are. Daniel called 17 times that day. I didn't answer. He called 17 more times the next day. On the 3rd day, he showed up at my apartment. I let him in because he was still my grandson, still my daughter's son, still the little boy who used to help me make cookies in this tiny kitchen. I'm so sorry, he said before he was even through the door. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I was an idiot. I was a coward. I let Vanessa and her family make me ashamed of where I came from, and that's unforgivable. Yes, I agreed. It is. I broke up with her. Last night. I told her I couldn't be with someone whose father built his business by taking advantage of people. And I told her I couldn't be with someone who made me into a person I didn't recognize. I gestured for him to sit. How did she take it? Not well. She said I was choosing poverty over success. That I was being stupid and sentimental. He laughed bitterly. Which is funny, because I wasn't choosing poverty. I was just choosing decency. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, I said. You can be successful and decent. Your grandfather was. He built a fortune without stealing from anyone. Why didn't you ever tell me? Daniel asked. About the money? The properties? All of it? Because I wanted you to love me for me, not for what I could give you. I wanted you to visit because you wanted to see your grandmother, not because you were hoping for an inheritance. I paused. And I wanted to know that you'd be okay without it, that you'd work hard, make your own way, build your own character. I failed that test, didn't I? You stumbled, I corrected. But you got back up. That's what matters. We talked for hours that afternoon. I told him about his grandfather, about the investments we'd made, about the buildings we'd bought when everyone else thought we were crazy. I showed him the files, the trust documents, the portfolio that would one day be his. I don't deserve this, he said quietly. No one deserves an inheritance, I said. But you can earn the right to manage it responsibly. You can learn from this. You can do better. I will. I promise. The next week, I met with Richard Pemberton one more time. This time, it was at my lawyer's office. And this time, Richard came ready to negotiate properly. I've reviewed all the Maple Street transactions, he said stiffly. My accountant will be reaching out to Mrs. Chen and the others with revised offers. Good, I said. And I've decided to alter the development plan. Instead of luxury condos, we'll be building mixed-income housing. 40% affordable units, 40% market rate, 20% luxury. It'll be less profitable, but more sustainable. I was surprised. That's a significant change. My daughter's been doing some thinking, he said. After Daniel broke up with her, she started asking questions about the business. Uncomfortable questions. She made me realize that maybe I've been so focused on profit margins that I forgot about people. That's very mature of Vanessa. She gets it from her mother, Richard admitted. Christine's been on me for years about our business practices. I just never listened before. We worked out a deal. I would sell Richard one of my 3 buildings, at fair market value, with the agreement that the development would include affordable housing and that current residents would have first right of refusal on the new units. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was progress. Daniel started coming to Sunday dinner again. He'd bring groceries and we'd cook together in my tiny kitchen, just like we used to when he was young. He started asking questions about the business, about property management, about investing. I want to learn, he said. When you're ready to start handing things over, I want to be ready to handle them responsibly. You will be, I said. 3 months later, I organized a meeting with all my tenants on Maple Street. I invited them to my apartment, which seemed fitting since most of them still didn't know I was their landlord. I wanted you all to know what's happening with the development, I told them. And I wanted to make sure you understood your rights. Mrs. Chen raised her hand. We heard Mr. Pemberton paid you a lot of money, that he's finally getting to build his fancy condos. He did pay me fair value for 1 building, I confirmed. But the other 2 buildings? Those are staying as they are. And the rents are staying the same. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you unless you choose to. Mr. Martinez looked confused. But who's the landlord? We still don't know who owns the buildings. I smiled. I do. I've owned them for 15 years. I've been your landlord this whole time. The room erupted in questions. Why hadn't I told them? Why did I live here if I owned the building? What did this mean for the future? I lived here because this is my home, I explained. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to change how you saw me. I'm not the landlord. I'm Margaret from 4A who makes too much noise with her television and forgets to separate her recycling sometimes. I'm your neighbor. That matters more to me than any title. That night, Daniel helped me clean up after everyone left. You could have charged them all market rate rent, he said. You could have made millions more over the years. I could have, I agreed. But then I would have just been another landlord squeezing people for profit. Instead, I have a community. I have neighbors who check on me, who invite me to their celebrations, who treat me like family. You can't buy that, Daniel. Grandma? He said quietly. Yes? When I have kids someday, I want them to know you. The real you. I want to teach them about what really matters. I hugged him tight. Your mother would be so proud of you. I hope so. The development went forward, and it was better than it would have been. Richard kept his word about the affordable housing. Some of my tenants chose to move into the new building when it was finished. Others, like Mrs. Chen and Mr. Martinez, stayed in their old apartments. The neighborhood changed, but it didn't lose its soul. Vanessa sent me a letter 6 months later. She'd left her father's company and started her own interior design firm, focusing on making small spaces beautiful and functional for people on budgets. She was dating a teacher. She was happy. Thank you for the wake-up call, she wrote. I needed to learn that worth isn't measured in square footage or postal codes. I wrote back, briefly, to wish her well. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. I still live in my apartment on Maple Street. I still drive my 10-year-old sedan. I still shop at the same grocery store and go to the same salon. But now Daniel knows the truth, and he's learning to manage the properties, learning to balance profit with responsibility. The other day, he brought a girl to meet me. Her name is Jessica. She's a social worker, and she didn't wrinkle her nose at my floral couch. She complimented my pot roast and asked me about the history of the building. Your grandmother's amazing, she told Daniel as they were leaving. You can tell she's lived a full life. After they left, I stood at my window looking out at Maple Street, the same street I've looked at for 42 years, the same neighbors, though some faces have changed, the same sense of home. Money doesn't buy you respect. It doesn't buy you love. It doesn't buy you community. But character, that's worth more than all the real estate in the world. And that's something I hope I've finally taught my grandson.